following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, across the moat from Oakland, and it is Indian summer in Northern California. Another native Alamedan joins me. Not that I'm a native Alamedan. I've only lived here 25 years. But originally from New York, I found a second home in Alameda. And I'm going to welcome back to the microphone one of my favorite folks in the whole world, Jerry Feitelberg, Alamedan. How you doing?
Thank you, Ralph. I'm doing great. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It's a pleasure for me because I'm going to get to hear about your trip.
Yeah.
You took the second cruise since I know you, and that's like 2-3 years. Where did you and your lovely companion, Isla, go?
We started the cruise in Copenhagen. We were there for 3 or 4 days pre-cruise. And then we did the Baltic cruise. We went to Helsinki. We went to St. Petersburg, Russia. We were there for 3 days. We went to Tallinn, Estonia. We went to 2 cities in Sweden, Stockholm and Gothenburg. We went to Gdansk, Poland. We went to Berlin. We went to Oslo. And we ended up in Amsterdam. And we spent 4 days in Amsterdam. We were in 9 countries total.
Now, were any of these countries repeats for you? Had you been there before?
No, first time for everything. The only other time I've been was in Amsterdam, but that was at the airport, and that doesn't count.
Okay, well, this is a podcast. I've had the pleasure of looking at some of your pictures. I'm blown away by European architecture. And not only that, I was blown away by the beauty of Poland. So my father came from Poland. My half my family, like I say, are Polish. Polish Jews escaped the war, and you have all kinds of pictures about of Germany. Post-war Germany with the wall and what have you. Talk about Poland for a second. I know you were surprised and impressed by the culture and the beauty of that country.
Yeah, I was really pleasantly surprised by Gdansk, Poland. I knew that I had heard of Gdansk in 1980 when Lech Walesa had the headed the union that had the Solidarity movement, and Walesa later became Prime Minister of Poland. And but I thought it was just an industrial town and it wasn't anything special. And when we got there, and our guide took us to the old town of Gdansk, I was blown away. And Old Town in Gdansk, and it was also known by Danzig, which was when the Germans had it. It was called Danzig, and when it went back to Poland, it went to the Polish name of Gdansk. The Old Town had been severely damaged during World War II, and of course the communists in Poland didn't do anything to repair it. And when communism fell in 1991, Poland, I guess, got on the track to become a capitalist society, and there was money available, and they rebuilt the old town in Gdansk, and it was beautiful, just beautiful. They restored a lot of the old architecture. They didn't make it brand new. They made it the way it was in the old days. They must have had pictures of the buildings. And it was just and they closed off the traffic, and you can walk there's a couple blocks that you just walk. It's like a mall, and it was very lovely. And it was crowded with people, and there's restaurants. They even have a casino there. They have, and the other thing that blew us away is our guide took us. We were just slightly off on a side street to Old Town. And we were in a home, and she said, this is where Lech Walesa lived when he had the Solidarity Movement in 1980. And there was a young man inside, and he was doing something. He was looking at us. We were looking at him. Our guide recognized that it was Walesa's son. I don't know his first name, but it was Lech Walesa's son. And he came out and talked to us, and the gentleman is running for the parliament in Poland. So that was kind of exciting.
And I think you took a picture of him. Am I not mistaken?
Yeah, I took a picture of Mr. Walesa. The other thing that was most impressive, in the Old Town they had a church, but the church that was absolutely spectacular was in Oliva, Oliwa. They pronounce it Oliva, and it's their word for olive. I guess there were some olive trees out there, possibly. They took us out, and there was this beautiful church. It was absolutely amazing. It had a magnificent organ in the church, and they treated us to a 20-minute concert, and we just loved it. Everybody in the church loved it. The interior of the church was magnificent, and it was a point of pride for the Polish people to show us their church. And it was very well taken care of. So we enjoyed that. And it really was nice. And they built a brand new football or soccer stadium. They have a great new sports complex in Gdansk too.
Nice to hear that. It's integral that we get some democratic countries in Europe. And Poland is that. If they're becoming a financial strength in world economy, it's better.
It's better.
It's better for the world. Tell us, tell the audience, you showed me pictures and told me stories about the wall in Germany. What you got to see from both sides, from both sides of Germany. You saw the wall. How is it being commemorated? How are the memories being kept alive?
Yeah, the wall was built, as you know, in August of 1961. Khrushchev built the wall to keep the people from East Germany from defecting to Berlin and to the West. And so and it surprised me, they had built about 100 miles of wall in the city to separate the East Berlin from West Berlin. And most of the wall now is gone. It was torn down, but they preserved part of it in the East Berlin section of the city. And when we took our tour, we went to certain sites that people are familiar with. We started we were at the Reichstag, which is in 1933 was burnt, and that ended the Weimar Republic and propelled Hitler into power in 1933, and that was the beginning of the 12-year reign of terror by the Third Reich, the Nazi regime at that time. And of course, the Russians, when they came in, the Russians, and the French, the English, and the United States, they partitioned Berlin. So the Russians had control of East Berlin, and then you had the American sector, the French sector, and the key building was the Brandenburg Gate, which is not too far from the Reichstag, and on the east side of the Brandenburg Gate there was no man's land, and if anyone was caught walking in no man's land, the communists would shoot them, kill them. So that's why it was called no man's land. Today it's open. The American Embassy is actually in East Berlin now, and and you can see the newer buildings since the fall of communism.
Has it truly become one country in terms of people getting benefits and
yes.
enjoying the country?
Yes.
Or is East
and
Berlin
can
still closed off to many things?
You can see the development in East Berlin. Tremendous amount of new buildings and new architecture, and there's thriving neighborhoods in there, and there's free flow of people throughout the whole city. It's no longer walled off. But what they did to commemorate the Berlin Wall, they took a pair of two bricks, and the path runs through the whole city. So when you see the two bricks, you knew that's where the wall once stood. And our guide took us over to the remnants of the wall, and we were on the side where, in the area known as the topography of terror, and we saw the wall, and in this little area, a few steps down, I showed you the picture of a basement of a building, and that basement was the headquarters of the Gestapo, the Nazi terror group in World War II. Then when we went on the other side...
And to think a Jew like you could be telling the story to a Jew like me about you having stood, I'd say 40 yards from the... It's fenced off, but you took pictures through the fence. I'd say you were 25, 30 yards maybe from.
Yeah, but they had steps you could go down, but we didn't go down. So that wasn't part of our tour. But when we
I'm just saying, from the standpoint of a point in history.
Oh yeah.
Because all this is very fresh to both of us.
Sure.
I was blown away by those pictures.
Oh yeah, and I'm glad that they commemorated it and they have it as a reminder. They also, I asked our guide, and I don't think I told you this. I asked our guide if where Hitler's bunker was, where he committed suicide. They have it's just a parking lot or a plot of grass in somewhere in Berlin. And they didn't make it a memorial because they didn't want people going there and who still wanted to idolize Hitler. So it's just a sort of a nondescript.
Or the other way around. They maybe not want people to go there to have
do whatever.
Desecrated. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think I told you when we got on the bus, we were on the other side of the wall now, and there was a building that I pointed out to you that was the Air Ministry during World War II, and that was headed by Hermann Goering. And Goering, as you know, was caught, and he was on trial at Nuremberg, but he did not let the Allies hang him. He had a cyanide filled and took care of business himself.
Well, good for him. I wish he'd have done it 30, 40 years before.
Yeah, right.
Just for him thinking about some of the things that he did, a human being would have made arrangements not to go through that period of history. But was what it is now. Would you say, and I think I pointed something out to you on the negative side about Germany, a statistic that I read that there are more members of neo-Nazi parties in Germany today, neo-Nazi parties today, than members of the Green Party, which started in Germany, which is, I think, is the greatest thing going in terms of something to save us eventually, if we're to be saved. What's the spirit of anti-Semitism like in Germany now, as you see it?
Well, anti-Semitism has always existed, and it may not be on top of the surface like it is with the neo-Nazis, but it's hard to tell because there are so few Jews left in Germany. And of course, Germany paid reparations to the Jews that had to leave or were, and the survivors of the Holocaust. And I think that the sentiment is they support Israel, but again, I'm sure that there's some anti-Semitism just below the surface. But I just couldn't get any sense that there was a problem when we were there. But again, we weren't there long enough. We weren't there long enough to see what life was like there in regards to that anti-Semitism or Jewish life in Germany.
Okay. As someone who travels, I'm curious. When you travel, what do you miss most about our country, our home?
That's a good question. We're not really concentrating on the United States while we're traveling. We're trying to take in the cultures of the countries that we're in, and sometimes we see similarities, and there are a lot of similarities. In Copenhagen and in Amsterdam, there are hard rock cafes. They have a lot of the things that a lot of the foods that we have. They have. They're pretty much the same. Life is pretty much the same. People like to eat out. People like to go to the theater. People like to go to the museums. They have concert halls in these countries. So life is similar in many regards, and life is dissimilar. For example, in Europe, in the cities like Copenhagen, there's a lot of foot traffic. Amsterdam, in the Dam Square area, there's a lot of people, and people go about their business, and you don't get the feeling that some nut's going to come out with an AR-15 and start mowing down people. You just don't get that sense. People are riding bicycles, they're walking, they're having a cappuccino at a cafe. They're enjoying life. And we do the same thing.
Terrorism doesn't go on in Europe as it does here.
Sure it does.
So we're not safe wherever you are.
For example, in Nice a couple of years ago, a guy in a truck ran down 80 or 90 people. You remember that? Yeah, so it happens. Terrible things happen.
It's a crazy world. Speaking of a crazy world, this is Sunday. I think it's the 5th of October, and Sunday the 6th of October as we record this. I'm just curious, and I ask a lot of my guests the same question. I'm going to ask you, what do you see the end game being for this evil regime of Trump?
I wish I could answer that question. The end game. I think Mr. Trump wants to be totally a dictator. He's totally autocratic. He's gotten rid of all the people around him who would say no to him. He in the Trump organization, when they were in business, he learned a lot of these things from his father. They would destroy documents in court cases with people who were suing them, and they would delay, they would deny, They wouldn't pay. They did anything that they could to obstruct anybody looking into what they've been doing. And he behaves like a mob boss, and I think and I hope that his organization, his governmental organization of Trump, Pence, Barr, Pompeo, Rick Perry, Rudy Giuliani, all find themselves behind the 8 ball and locked up in a jail cell somewhere when all this is said and done.
Do you consider his statements the other day on the White House lawn asking for help from China in investigating his political adversary? Do you consider that to be checkmate on impeachment, and do you think that the Republican Senate will come around to this? Is there anything more obvious in your eyes, and is it will this be the straw that broke the camel's back? Just curious.
I think you're right in that regard. He asked a communist country to dig up dirt on his potential political opponent, and he had already done the same thing with Ukraine. And he held up funds that had been appropriated by the United States Congress to go to Ukraine to buy weapons, so that they could fend off the Russian attempt to take over. The Russians took over Crimea, and they were taking over part of eastern Ukraine, and they needed the weapons to defend themselves. And he had held it up, and then he asked the president of Ukraine to dig up dirt on a political opponent, Joe Biden and his son, which was a quid pro quo. In order for Ukraine to get what they needed, he had to do something for Trump, which was get dirt on his political opponent, which is considered a thing of value, and that was a crime. And then he doubled down by asking China to do the same thing. And now we're hearing that there's a second whistleblower on the Ukraine issue, a person who has firsthand knowledge of what Trump has done and said, and that's at the Inspector General's for review right now, and that will be forthcoming. And I think that he will be impeached, but Mitch McConnell will see to it that he's not convicted. He'll put the pressure on the 53 Republican senators. They need 20 Republicans to vote to remove him from office. And if it were a secret ballot, he would be removed from office. But they don't want. If they have to put their names on it, these people are cowards, and they think that if they do that, they'll get thrown out by their people in their home states. That remains to be seen. But there's no question in my mind that you should not put party before country. You should put the country before your party. And this guy is running a criminal enterprise and has to be removed.
Right. And just to touch bases on that, it doesn't have to be criminal to get him impeached.
No.
So nothing has to be proven. And unlike with the Mueller report and the investigations in this, he confessed in front of God and everybody on the White House lawn what he was doing. What I don't understand, why, and it would switch the Senate if the people were outraged. It would push what the senators are doing because their reelection becomes at stake. They're walking that fine line. Why aren't this is rhetorical, but I just don't understand. When I see this stuff happen day to day, I'm outraged at what's going on. 2 or 3 days later, it's out of the news, and there's something new to be outraged at. What will outrage Johnny Lunchbucket and the working poor, the unwashed masses, as they say? What will get people outraged. I'm curious to know.
Well, yeah, there are a lot of people who are concerned about what he has done, and then his game plan is to first of all deny, then he goes on the attack, then he plays on the victim, and then he goes into his chaotic deflection dance. So they know what he's doing. A lot of people across the country are outraged. The people in the Rust Belt states bought into the fact that when he was running for president, he said that he was going to bring manufacturing back. Well, he didn't bring manufacturing back, and in fact, a lot of the tariffs that he's put in place, where a lot of the manufacturing that's going on get a lot of their supplies from overseas, and they would now having to pay more money for their parts and supplies and that type of thing, and they've moved their plants to Mexico where it's cheaper. So it's not really paying off, and the jobs aren't there. General Motors has laid off a lot of people, and the jobs in the steel industry are not coming back. Coal is on its way out, and the coal industry knows it, but he's trying to prop it up. He wants to drill. He wants to pollute the rivers because he said the coal miners can dump their poison into the waters. He wants to reduce the energy emission standards in California and poison the air in California. He wants to do all these things. He's going to lease federal lands for more drilling. And the way of the future is not the fossil fuel industry, it's the clean air industry, solar, wind, those things. And there are going to be more jobs in those industries than there are in the old Rust Belt industries of coal and steel, that type of thing. So his thinking is antediluvian. He's thinking his 19th century thinking, and we're in the 21st century. So why would you want to have him as a leader? He's gonna say that the economy is good and unemployment is low, but people know the unemployment may be low, but they're working 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. They want jobs that are good paying so that they can support their family and not work themselves into a grave.
Okay. Let's segue a little bit, talk about one of your passions. You are a journalist. You cover the A's, and they were just eliminated in a one-game playoff with Minnesota,
with Tampa Bay.
Tell me what your thoughts are. What positives have come out of it for next year? Because that's what baseball is. You don't make it all the way, wait till next year. What do you see how they grew this year transcending to next?
Yeah, the A's have a great young nucleus of good players. Their infielders, they have 3 infielders that could win Gold Gloves. Matt Chapman and Matt Olson both won a Gold Glove last year, and Chapman was a Platinum Award winner as the best fielder in baseball. Marcus Semien is a candidate for a Gold Glove at shortstop, and all 3 of those gentlemen had over 30 home runs this year. Chapman and Olson had 36, and Semien had 33. And Semien led the team in hitting. He was hitting about almost 290. He had a tremendous year and is a potential MVP candidate. Second base was a little bit of a problem.
We've talked about this before with Marcus Semien. There's a man who's grown more after he reached the major leagues than almost anyone I could think of in the past 10, 15 years. This guy has gotten better and better for 3 years straight, beyond belief. Yep. Credit Ron Washington, am I correct? Former coach, defensive coach with the A's, did a little managing around the league. He managed Texas for a while. I think he's a bench coach in in Atlanta now. He's improved their defense. Lives on the West Coast.
No, he lives in New Orleans.
And I think that's why he left Oakland to begin with. He was a guy that was directly responsible for 6 Golden Gloves won by Chavez, who credited him by giving him one of his Gold Gloves. So Ron Washington did a job on not only Chavez, but on Simeon. Wow, he's good now.
Yeah, Ron Washington is from New Orleans, and he lost his home in Hurricane Katrina, and Eric Chavez had given him one of his Gold Gloves as a thank you for working with him. And that was lost in Hurricane Katrina, but the MLB replaced it for him. Ron Washington was the first manager to take the Texas Rangers into the World Series, and he did it 2 years in a row. And then he left. He had some personal reasons, and he left the job as manager. A couple of years later, he came over to Oakland as an advisor, and he worked with Marcus Semien. And I watched him, and I talked to Ron, and Ron said Marcus had come over to the A's. He was a second baseman with the Chicago White Sox. He had never played shortstop, and the A's put him at shortstop. In his first year with the A's, he made something about 33 errors. And his throwing was off, his footwork was off. And I saw Ron Washington work with him using special equipment so that he would do his footwork, and then he worked with him on his throwing and how to step up and throw properly. And it got better for Marcus. And as you mentioned earlier, he improved every year, and he goes into spring training thinking, how can I do better this year than I did last year? And he works at it. He works very, very hard at it. And this is what happens when you talk to athletes. Some athletes, to get to major leagues, you have to be a pretty damn good ball player. You just don't get there. But some guys have all the natural ability in the world. Mike Trout, who's probably the best ball player in baseball, has tremendous natural ability. But Trout doesn't take it for granted either. He works to get better every year. And he's won a couple of MVP awards, and he's come in second 3 or 4 times. He's always in the top 2 or 3 players every year in the race for MVP. Unfortunately, he's never had a team around him where he could go to the World Series and show what he could do. But getting back to the A's have out in the outfield, they've got Ramon Laureano, who they picked up in a trade with the Astros, who hit about 290 and had 24 homers, and he missed a month of the season. They have Stephen Piscotty, who was hurt a couple times during the year. Hopefully he'll stay healthy. He's a terrific fielder, good hitter in right field. They had Mark Canha, who filled in for Laureano, and Canha ended up with 26 or 27 home runs this year, playing part-time, and really did a super job.
For you. While Laureano was hurt, Canha fills in center field, does an admirable job. Canha's back. They put him in right. Or Laureano's back, and they put him in right, and Canha remains in center. I thought Laureano was a terrific fielder. Is Canha as good a fielder in center? And does Laureano have a better arm? Is that it?
No, I think that they were concerned about he had a shin injury. They didn't want him to aggravate it. So there were more plays, on center field you have to run to the left and to the right. So I think they wanted to restrict his range in the outfield.
That's it. And has Piscotty, was he hurt down the stretch? Is that why?
Yeah, he hurt his knee earlier, and then he sprained his ankle. So he wasn't quite ready. Wasn't quite ready. But they had next year. I'm pretty sure the Canha will be playing left field. Their DH. They had a problem with DH this year. Chris Davis, who had over 40 home runs in the first 3 years with the A's, He was he had about 18 home runs.
He had a lousy
in
year. Let's
games.
say. Truth be known.
Well, what happened is he ran into the wall in Pittsburgh, and I think he must have broken a rib or hurt a rib or something. He couldn't swing. He was off all season long, and I think he'll have all winter to rest, and hopefully he'll be back. But again, if he's not, then they can move Canna into the DH spot and use Seth Brown, who came up, was hitting pretty well. He can play left field. He's a left-handed bat. The A's are primarily a right-handed hitting team now. They used to be heavy into the left-handers, but this year they're heavy on the right-handers.
May I ask you this? Has Murphy beat out Fegley at catcher?
Well, I think Murphy's the catcher of the future. I think that he played and he handled Sean Manaea real well. If you recall, he was behind the plate when Manaea won four of the 5 games that he started, and he was behind the plate in the 1-game playoff. But
the future basically has arrived. He's the number 1 catcher at this point.
He's going to be the number 1 catcher.
Okay, and did you happen to see a clip of a play that he made, a defensive play that he made in the bottom of an inning that would have, had he not made this play, would have cost the A's the game right there? He goes for a bad hop, and it was like a shortstop going for a ball. For a wild pitch. It was unbelievable.
It was a terrific play.
Terrific play. Pull up a clip of that, and also pull up a clip any day of Chapman at third base. He's a magician.
He's like he's the new Brooks Robinson, as far as I'm concerned. He's like Brooks Robinson, a vacuum cleaner.
Yeah. There are a few of them. Arrieta, his high school teammate with Colorado. Arenado. Tremendous skills.
The problem that the A's have, and they're going to have to address it, is their starting rotation. They really don't have an ace in the rotation. They don't have a number 1 guy. Now they've got guys coming up that were injured that are coming back. AJ Puck had Tommy John surgery, and he's a lefty, and he played well. Jesus Luzardo looked terrific in relief.
Oh my God, what stuff he has in the bullpen! Is their closer hurt, Turan or?
Trinan was hurt, and he was on the IL at the end of the year. So was Lou Trevino. They have one other guy that was going to be the ace of the staff, and until he got suspended for illegal substance use, and that was Frankie Montas. Montas was 9-2, and was pitching extraordinarily well. So there, I gave you 3 names: Montas, AJ Puck, Luzardo, 2 lefties and a righty that can step into the starting rotation next year, and hopefully those 3 will be like the Mulder, Zito, Hudson days way back when, in the early 2000s, and be the core of the rotation. They have.
It wouldn't surprise me if Luzardo ends up as the closer eventually.
That's possible too. Yeah, I think they're going to keep Mike Fiers. Brett Anderson won 13 games, but he was okay. But he would give you good 4 innings, and then in the 5th and 6th innings he'd run into trouble. They picked up Homer Bailey, who pitched okay. Tanner Roark, not so okay. He was so. So they're going to have to make decisions on their starting rotation. Jarrell Cotton
Anderson stays healthy for almost 2 years now. That's a surprise.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. So
a pleasant one, I might add.
Oh yeah.
Okay. I hate talking about this. I always have, but we have to address it. We have over the years. The stadium issue. I think they were dealt another setback in the past few weeks.
Yes, that is true.
That.
In order to build a new stadium, the stadium has to be privately financed, and the A's are willing to do that. But in order to get the revenue to pay for it, they want to buy the current location of the Oakland Coliseum, and it's owned by the city of Oakland and by the county of Oakland. And the county of Oakland has agreed to sell their interest to the A's for $85 million. The city of Oakland doesn't want to do that for that price. They sued them, and it looks like they want to hold them up for more money. The A's want to develop the property, and the revenue from the development will help pay for the new stadium, and that was their thinking. So by delaying it, and the commissioner of baseball was here and saying, look, if you guys can't get it done, it could be the Las Vegas A's. They could go.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to lose.
Or
you're
Charlotte.
Going to lose your team. Or Charlotte, or Portland, or Montreal. There are cities that want a baseball team, and the A's, if they can't get their stadium, and they need the stadium because they're going to need the revenues to keep the players. The model that the A's are using, that they get
and
young
the fans.
players.
No one wants to go out to that dilapidated piece of crap anymore. They paint it up every year. They put, try to make it as fan-friendly as possible. But the sight lines, when they closed it in, they took all the charm out of it. It used to be open like in Kansas City, and it was really a nice place to watch a ball game. They made it into a football diamond, a football field. They took a baseball diamond, made it into a football field. And the charm is gone. Plus, the plumbing backs up. It's just, it needs to be, they need a stadium, let's face it, or they are going to be gone.
They need the amenities. They need the amenities like the other cities. You go over to AT&T Park. There are problems with AT&T Park, and you go out into left field, and the stands way out in left field. You can't see a portion of the field because it's right below you. So it's not a perfect stadium, but it's a nice experience. It's a baseball experience like you have in New York, like you have in Boston, like you have in Chicago. We use public transportation to get there. It's an enjoyable experience. People are walking around. There are vendors. You go in the stadium food at AT&T, or they call it AT&T. It's Oracle Park now. The stadium food is very good. You get all kinds of concessions that serve decent food. I'm sure they have some at the Oakland Coliseum, but it's not the same fan experience that you get in San Francisco. And the A's are trying to address it. They're going to have a smaller ballpark with about 35,000 people, so you get that intimate feeling that you're part of the game like you do in Boston, where you can literally talk to the players. They're so close. And that's what they want to do. But if they can't
I get the feeling that trying to do two things at once in two separate locations, build up the area around where the Coliseum is now. That's a risk. That takes 5 years to build up that stuff. If they're looking for revenues, am I right?
Yeah, I understand. Sure. But they may have investors into the buildings. other private entities coming in to put up the buildings, put up the money. So they would get the money and use that to build a stadium.
It seems a little complicated given the pressure they're under to build the stadium. They could have, that's all. They're going to have some problems at the location they are with new ecological reports.
Yeah.
The area doesn't lend itself towards gentrification for reasons we've discussed.
I get that.
Right?
That was
no
not
income,
my choice.
no incoming, no way to bring the fans in without doing an awful lot and putting an awful lot of thought and money into that. I think getting financing and combining the two to make it work just complicates things. And as we've often talked about, we're not dealing with the A's, are not dealing with people, both the county and the city, who have been friendly to previous franchises, made it easier for previous franchises. Say Oakland left twice, the Warriors gone again. I don't feel as confident as I did 6 months ago that this is going to happen.
Yeah, well, I think we've discussed this before, and we said I'll believe it when the steam shovels are breaking ground to build the stadium.
You were the one that said that, and you and I thought, well, he's just being, because it seemed like a sure thing 6 months ago.
Yeah, it seemed like it. Yeah.
And I drank a little Kool-Aid on that one. Let's put it that way.
I'll believe it when hopefully they'll get it. Hopefully they'll get it worked out. Hopefully.
All right, my friend. Thank you for a terrific podcast today. You really make my job easy. I talk to the most interesting people on the planet, and today with Jerry Feitelberg was absolutely no exception. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Thank you for listening, everybody. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. I'm Ralph Tyko, the weak link of it all. Adios.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.